Hello, everyone, and welcome to our Res Life Forum. I am Rose Boulet, Director of Office of Parent Services. We are very excited to welcome new and current students to campus this fall. My office, along with Residential Life Student Services and Resident Education, want to take this opportunity to answer any outstanding questions you have about your students residing on campus this fall. Some housekeeping matters before we start. You are muted for the remainder of the session. If you leave the session, you will not be able to come back in. The chat feature is disabled for you, but you would still be able to see what we post. For those watching via YouTube, our channel is not being monitored. Please understand that this is a very fluid situation, so answers we may have given you a few weeks ago may have been modified. And although our fall opening plan has been released to the entire community, we can only speak to or address questions related to housing at the moment. The full report is available online at umass.edu/reopening. We encourage you to review the entire report when you have a chance if you haven't already. Our main goal today is to answer your housing related questions to help you make the best decisions for you and your student. Thank you for submitting your questions in advance. We'll spend most of the time answering them. You should see a question button on your screen. Please submit additional questions while we speak so we'll have enough time to answer them. We ask that you keep your follow-up questions on the topic being discussed, which is on-campus housing, and as general as you can. If we don't get to your questions, we'll be sure to follow up with you individually. Now, I'd like to take this time to introduce our panelists. With me today are Jean MacKimmie, Director, Residence Education, Don Bond, Director, Residence Life Operations. They will each introduce themselves as they speak. Also with me is Pete Smith, Director, Student Affairs and Campus Life, Communications and Professional Development. Pete will state your submitted questions to the panelists who will then answer them. We'll end this session with a brief closing statement from the panelists. At this time, I'll turn the spotlight over to our panelists and Pete.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Dawn Bond, Director of Residential Life Operations. It's so nice to see you all here, although I can't actually see you. I know you're there. And I am going to start by covering some material in a PowerPoint slide that we've put together because we have seen many of your frequently asked questions, and we thought it would be helpful to start with some information that will address many of those questions. And so I'm going to start by talking a little bit about our assignment process and have some housing assignment updates for you. So as you know, as students and families of new students and first-year students and transfer students coming in for fall, the deadline for your preference application was this Tuesday. And we are currently in the process of assigning first-year students and transfer students to residence halls. As announced by the Chancellor last Monday, we have invited all students back to campus. And what that means for us in residential life is that we, in our returning student halls, we're already full. We were at capacity. We have very high demand for living on campus because we have a wonderful program. And we have also had high demand from incoming first-year students and transfer students. And so several weeks ago in one of the planning documents, it was stated that there may be limited occupancy on campus, and there may be an opportunity that students would be placed in a single room alone if we were about 50% occupied. We are not going to be 50% occupied. We're going to be much higher occupied than that. And so first-year students and transfer students who requested single rooms will be considered for a single room placement. But most first-year students and transfer students coming in will be placed in a shared room with a roommate. And we will only be using rooms that are designed for that room type. And so there are many design doubles that students will be living in, and there are some design triples that are large enough to house 3 students. So that was a question that came up very often this week around, will I be in a single occupancy room? Because I read in one of the plans that we were thinking about putting single students in single occupancy rooms. And so the answer is no. About 240 or so first year and transfer students will be placed in a design single, but the remainder will have a roommate. You also have the opportunity to cancel your preference application up until July 30th. And we know that you as families are making really difficult decisions and considerations about whether your student will be on campus with us in the residence halls this fall. And so you will be able to cancel without penalty through July 30th. And you can do so by sending an email to the living@umass.edu email address with your name and your student ID and your request to cancel for fall. And we will process that cancellation and you will receive a receipt. We will release assignments to first year students and transfer students on Friday, July 31st. On Spire, students will be able to go on and see where they've been assigned for the fall, and they will also be able to see any roommate information. And then we encourage you on this day to get in touch with your new roommate for fall and start to think about how it's going to work together and how you're going to live together for the next semester. So that's a little bit on how we're doing assignments, and I'd like to now move to what we're working on for our fall move-in program. Fall move-in is going to be very different this year. Move-in at UMass is one of our highlight events, and it's an event that I'm part of every year, and it's very special. We've worked really hard to make it special for families, and it's going to be just very different this year. We're going to still use the move-in reservation, where over a 9-day stretch, we're going to be inviting students to move in. I'll come to that timeline in a moment. But August 5th through 10th, students will be invited to go onto Spire and select a move-in reservation time. Students will select into a 1-hour time slot. And in that 1-hour time slot, that's when we expect you to arrive to campus and unload the car and park the car in an adjacent parking lot. The second hour of your move-in is for you to unpack the room and start to set up a little bit. We do need to limit the amount of time that families are in the residence halls with their student, moving them in. And so it's a 2-hour window from start to finish for move-in this year. We are doing a contactless move-in, and we will be doing that August 15th through August 23rd. And the way that will work is that in the My UMass app, we will have directions to every residence hall and where your unload zone is located, so that it is easy for you to come onto campus and know where you should go to start to unload your car. And there will be laundry bins available in unload zones where there are elevators, so that you can containerize your belongings and move them into the residence halls. We will not be wiping down the bins between usage. And so we encourage you, if you plan to use a bin, to bring wipes to do so. And then as families return the bins back to the unload zone areas, they'll be available throughout the entire move-in period. We will also be issuing you your key through your mailbox. And your mailbox combination is in Spire, and you'll have that ahead of time. And there are videos for each type of mailbox combination. And I will tell you, you got to try a couple of times. I've never gotten it the first time when I've tried to help a student open their mailbox. And so we've got some instructional videos that you'll want to watch, pre-watch. And I imagine you may even have to watch it while you're trying to open your mailbox when you come in. In the mailbox for new students, your room key will be in a small envelope for you so that you can move into your room. And we will also have your UCard available for you in your mailbox. And so that will be ready for you when you arrive, because you will need your UCard the very first day when you get here. When we are moving students in between 8 a.m. and 6 p.m., the doors to the residence halls will be propped open to make it easier for folks to move in. But around 6:30 p.m. each evening, when we're wrapping up, the doors will close and you will need your UCard to access your residence hall. We don't want anyone locked out. And so you'll need your UCard. What will move-in look like beyond that? We are going to encourage roommates not to move in at the same time, because it is a self-service move-in reservation. We encourage you to talk with your apartment mates, roommates, or suite mates, depending on where you're assigned, because we want to not have two families moving in at the same time. And so there's going to be a little self-coordination on your end to work that out. It's okay with us if you move in on the same day. We just don't want you to have the same move-in slot, so that families can move their student in and then leave campus, and then the next roommate can move in. Yeah, so that's what move-in is going to look like in general. We are going to provide you with lots of additional information about how move-in is working. We're still in some of our planning phases, but I think those are the bones to how we're going to be working move-in. And one of the frequently asked questions that I received earlier was whether the helpers, the family members who are coming, there will be a limit of 2 for each student moving in, whether they have to do a COVID test before coming to campus, and you are not required to do that. There are going to be many requirements around face coverings and social distancing. So we will remind you about all of that when we get a little closer to move in, but the family members who are helping will not need to have a COVID test. And then my next slide that I'd like to talk a little bit about, because we're getting lots of questions about this too, is what to bring. So I've experienced move-in on this campus for the last almost 20 years, and I do actually know how much stuff students bring. And oftentimes, even not in a pandemic, it's too much stuff. And so this year, we do need to have you be very thoughtful about the essential needs and what you will need for about a 12-week period. And so we are going to limit at move-in the amount of belongings you're able to move in. We have laundry carts that we usually issue for move-in, and we're hoping that the items that you're bringing will fit in 1 laundry cart. Anything beyond 1 laundry cart means to me that it will be difficult for you to move out if we have to close again, which we're hoping we will not have to, or when you go to check out in November before Thanksgiving. We are requiring that all students will be checking out and taking all their belongings home and turning their key into us. It will be easier for you as well to check out after about a 12-week period. We are also doing some changes to how you can set up your room. One of the things that's highly popular on our campus are lofting kits, and students like to either request the lofting kits or get them from the common spaces. We set them out for students at move-in, and they like to organize their room in different ways. One of the things that we're not allowing this year at move-in is additional furniture. And one of the reasons why people like to loft their beds is because they like to make space for that futon or those comfy chairs that they're moving in. And so this year, this fall, there will not be lofting kits available to any students in the residence halls. What I can tell you is the height of the bed, standard height of the bed when you move in, will be at the highest level. We call that the captain's height. And that will allow for you to push some larger storage bins, or even in some cases, the dresser in the room under the bed to make a little bit more space. But again, we will not be providing the materials to loft beds or the tools to do so as well. We're also looking at our packages for fall. Last year, between September and March, when we closed, we processed over almost 250,000 packages. And we will not be able to support that volume this year with some of the restrictions that we have in place in our workspaces, where our residential service desks is where we process packages for students as they come in. And so we're still working out the fine details here, but there are going to be some restrictions on how often students can have items shipped to the campus, because we just honestly will not be able to process them in a way that will get students with the items that they've purchased. We also are going to encourage you, as part of the community agreement, to have a self-isolation go bag ready. If there is a situation where you either have to self-quarantine or go into self-isolation, then you will need to be able to take this with you very quickly. You will not be going back to your room to pack items. And we're going to have very limited contact when someone goes in and gets that bag for you and takes it to the place where you're either going to be self-quarantining or self-isolating. We are encouraging this year for you to think about bringing an outdoor chair, a camping chair, lawn chair, folding chair, because we do want you to have seating if you want to sit outside in the grassy areas around our residence halls, or just be able to be a little more mobile outside. A blanket's also another good idea. Again, we have good grassy areas around most of our residential areas for that type of go outside, get some fresh air, study. So those are two items that we're recommending this year that we haven't in the past. You are certainly going to need a fan. It is going to be mid-August when we start moving you in. And it can be humid here in August. I mean, it can be humid here and in September, but it certainly will be warm the last few weeks of August. I can also tell you from my experience of being in the Amherst area is that there will not be a fan for sale in the local area. So you'll really want to think about taking care of this now and having it ready for when your student comes, because it'll be hard to get a small fan in the local area once you arrive. And that's an example of the laundry bin that I was speaking of. Those are the dimensions, and it fits well about a carload of belongings. So that's what you want to be thinking about as you're doing some planning and prep for your move-in this fall. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to turn it over to Jean MacKimmie, and she's going to talk a little bit about what it's going to be like to live in the residence halls.
Hi, everyone. So as Dawn said, I'm Jean MacKimmie. Rose introduced me as well. I am responsible for the student life aspects of the residence halls and work with all the staff who live and work in our halls, the residence directors, the RAs, peer mentors, etc. And so, I want to share with you kind of what we have planned for residence hall community this upcoming year. Also want to share on a personal note that my daughter just graduated from high school last month and is also college bound this fall. So I know these are difficult decisions and you're trying to think through lots of questions. So anything that we can do to try to answer those questions, we're willing to do, because we all want as much as anyone to provide what we always provide. So I really want to be able to provide a full in-person residential experience that is the hallmark of what UMass does. And given the public health guidance, we have to adapt. And so I want to talk a little bit about some of the adaptations we're going to be making and some of the things that we're committed to doing. So your student should have received the link to the UMass agreement, which they will need to agree to in order to return to campus. What that does is really educate students on what some of the public health guidance is that we want them to agree to in order to participate as a member of the community. So in order to live in the residence halls, students will need to review that agreement and agree to the things in that agreement. Again, as an educational tool, so people understand what we're expecting and what we're going to need from our students and from our staff in order to create a safe community on campus. Our staff in the residence halls will continue to educate about those agreements. So encourage our students to wear their face coverings and stay in small groups and not create a safety concern for other members of the community. So the things that we normally do in the residence halls, some of them we're going to continue to do, but just in a different manner. So we have a residential curriculum. We are committed to student learning in the residence halls, and we are continuing to do our curricular approach to student learning in the residence halls. Just the activities that we do will be different. And so we will do small group activities, so students will be able to get together with a small group of peers on their floor. We will actually, for first year students in particular and returning students who are looking for that connection, form some small groups so that students can meet a small group of students on their floor. The RAs will work with those small groups, and we will provide some suggested activities for those groups of students so they can connect with each other. One of the focus areas of our curriculum is community connection and engagement. So we want students to meet each other. We want people to be connected. We don't want people to feel completely isolated. However, we are not going to do community meetings of 50 people. That doesn't follow the current Massachusetts public health guidelines. And so we will do some of those larger events virtually. Our staff will do that. Some other things to know about life in the residence halls this fall will be that We will not be permitting any guests. And the definition of a guest is anyone who does not reside in that residence hall. So students who live within the same hall will be able to interact with each other and visit each other, but we won't be permitting people to enter that hall who do not live in that hall. And really, again, that's to maintain physical distancing and not bring too many people together in one space. Our residence halls are locked 24 hours a day. Students have card access to their halls, and we will continue to have residence hall security at the front doors during the evening hours, in particular to monitor guests into the residence halls. Our staff, we have resident assistants. Resident assistants are the student staff members who live and work on the floors. We have peer mentors who work in first year halls. They focus on academic and transition support. And then we also have full-time residence directors and graduate assistants who live and work in our residence halls. Again, the roles of our staff will be, as far as the purpose around connection and safety and education, will be very similar. The ways that we're going to be doing that are going to be different. And so, you know, we will provide students with access to the information about how to connect with our staff virtually. They will have those phone numbers, they will have those email addresses. But, you know, based on our current public health situation, you won't find a staff member sitting in the lounge waiting to greet students, but we will be outreaching to students. We'll be connecting to those students who are living on campus. Our community spaces will be open. I think Don talked about this briefly, that we will have the majority of our lounges and common spaces and study rooms available to students. We will have limits to the number of students who will be able to be in those spaces at one time. So we are looking again at that public health guidance to identify this space is big enough for 4 people to socially distance. And so that will be clearly posted on that lounge. We are also looking at identifying spaces within the residence halls where students may be able to schedule that space. Some of our halls are going to allow for that a little bit better than others because of the number of spaces that are available, but we recognize students are going to be in remote classes. They may have telehealth appointments where they want some privacy. So we're looking into how to provide that access to a private space if a student has a roommate in the residence halls. We will continue to be a 24/7 operation, both on the facility side and on the residence education side. So your student, for those students who are out there as well on this Zoom, we will be available. You will know how to reach us so that we can respond as students need that. And so again, some of that will maybe more phone or Zoom conversations as we're talking to people, and some socially distanced with face covering experiences in person. I've seen a number of questions about both the agreement and then travel. So I'll kind of take those because those are a little bit about what life in the residence halls is. And so the UMass agreement was, I believe, available on the COVID page, the UMass reopening page that students can review. It is close to prepared for students to actually sign that agreement. And so that will be done in Spire, where students will go into their Spire account to be able to review the agreement and then check that they agree to that agreement online. So that is coming very soon and will be released to students. There are a lot of questions also about travel. You know, we are advising students to limit their travel. So there's not a restriction on travel. Students will be able to travel, you know, move around campus, go to get food on campus, so dining areas, go into town to get a slice of pizza, or go to some of our other fantastic dining establishments, go to Target, Walmart, do their errands. And students can leave campus for the weekend if they choose. What we do ask is that students be responsible about their travel. If they're traveling within Massachusetts, they don't need to return in quarantine. However, we all know that the Commonwealth has issued a directive around travel to Massachusetts around a 14-day quarantine. So if a student were to leave those states at this point, we would expect them to, if they return to campus, to then participate in that 14-day quarantine. But we recognize kind of jobs off campus, healthcare, Certainly outdoor activities, personal business are going to be things that students are going to need to do in the area and may need to also leave campus for a weekend during the course of the semester. One thing to add about the agreement and enforcement, again, our role will be primarily educational. We will be reminding students if they walk into the hallway without their face covering, we will ask them to go back and put their face covering on. However, if there are blatant violations of significant public health things, we will take that through the conduct process. Our success is for students to agree to return to campus and protect themselves and the rest of the community. And if a student is unable to do that, again, not by small things, but some more significant things, we will review that through the code of conduct. Okay, next slide. Over to Pete.
I'm ready. Thank you. First, Jean and Dawn, thank you so much for all of that information. I mean, I think it's, you answered a lot of people's questions, I know, because there's 500 in this room and another 1,300 watching on YouTube. And they are all very grateful to get that information. And so I will just remind folks who are watching on the YouTube live stream that we are not monitoring the questions on the YouTube chat. We can only respond to the questions that are coming in here. So thank you for your patience, and please do email living@UMass with any questions that are unanswered. Okay, so we're going to jump into some of the questions that are coming in. The first one I want to ask Dawn, this is a follow-up from something that you said in your opening remarks. You mentioned that students would need their UCard to access the buildings. Can you talk a little bit more about what returning students who lost their UCard need to do and what incoming students need to do to get a UCard?
Absolutely. Thanks for that great question. This is really important. I've actually been in contact with the staff that work in the UCard office this morning. And this year, different from other years, we are able to have students on campus for new student orientation. And that's typically when they go to the UCard office and have their photograph taken and their UCard is processed. And then when they leave at the end of their orientation, we give it to you. And then you have it for when you return for fall move-in. And so that's not going to be an option for us this year. And so new incoming students, both first-year students and transfer students, need to follow the steps that are outlined in the Moodle about how to go ahead and upload a photo into the UCard office so that they can create a UCard for you and print it and then hand it off to me, because if you don't do that, we won't have a UCard for you in your mailbox when you come. And as of this morning, and this number is super too low for where we are this summer, only 300 students had uploaded their photo into the UCard area. And so it's really important that you take care of that task. It's one of the tasks on the student checklist. And so, and what won't be helpful for the UCard office, they're going to change their deadline. The original deadline was August 7th, but now that move-in has moved up and classes have moved up and the academic calendar has changed, they are going to be announcing a new deadline. Students will need to upload their photo by July 31st. What won't be helpful for the UCard staff is if everybody does it on July 31st. And so maybe tomorrow is the right time for you to go ahead and put your UCard into the area so they can start making those cards over the next few weeks. For returning students, if there are returning students online, if you've lost your UCard, you want to contact the UCard office, and they will also process you a reprint and get that to Residential Life. And we will put that in your mailbox with your room key if we have it. If UCard knows that you've lost your UCard and they're able to process it and get it to us, we will get you your UCard on your move-in day. There are going to be limited UCard office hours during that 9-day period, and the UCard office will not be open during all the hours that we are checking students in, including weekends and after normal business hours. And so this is an important task for folks to take care of.
Thank you so much, Dawn. So Don, while I have you here, let me ask you another question. Could you give a little bit more information? So we're seeing lots of questions coming in the chat. People who pre-selected roommates, but now have found out that their roommate is not planning to return. What's the process like for them? Do they get to reselect, or will they be randomly placed?
So for students, our returning students who have already selected assignments and now someone in that group is leaving the room, we do have to, we are going to be assigning our transfer students to bed spaces. So there is a small chance that you may have a new person assigned to your room. I will tell you that we are working hard in the assignment office to try not to use as many of those backfill spaces as possible, but we are not able to guarantee that you will not get a different roommate. And I know this question's out there too, so I'll tack it into here, is that, well, can I get my, if I cancel for fall, can I have my exact assignment back in the spring? And that's also not something that we can guarantee. In fact, we're not sure what the status for spring will be. And so if we're fully occupied, I can say for sure that we will have housing for all students who are interested in living on campus for the spring. But being back to the exact space that you may have picked in March or April of this past spring isn't something that I can say unilaterally students will get back.
Thank you so much, Don. And thank you for absolutely anticipating what another one of the frequently asked questions was going to be. While you're on that topic, so you mentioned that people will be moving out fully at the end of the fall semester. Can you just say a little bit more about the thinking behind that decision and why they need to move fully out?
Absolutely. Well, we've learned a lot since March, and we are not sure what our status will be. Our hope is that we're moving towards a vaccine. Our hope is that we are able to be back to normal business operations and fully occupied in the spring. But without any guarantees in that area, we are going to ask students to move out and completely check out so that we are in a place to pivot if something changes about the status of our campus. As some of you may know, returning students had to vacate with very little notice, and many of them were not able to check out properly. And we were holding on to students' belongings for almost 9 weeks. We were not able to move our returning students out last spring until the very end of May. And so we don't want to replicate that. We also want to thoroughly deep clean our residence halls, again, between semesters. And so in order to do that, students' belongings need to be removed, and we need to be able to access spaces so that we can deep clean them for the upcoming semester.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Don. Okay, Jean, I've got a couple of questions for you. So about life in the residence halls and social distancing. Will there be schedules for accessing the bathrooms and laundry facilities in the residence halls?
At this point, we're not planning a schedule for those facilities. We will communicate to students what the appropriate number of people are for those facilities at one time. And then if a community wants to work on that, we will certainly work on that with a community to help them schedule. But I think it's really hard to schedule your bathroom use. So to be perfectly honest, but certainly we'll work with students to try to facilitate and communicate what's expected. In addition to laundry rooms, again, and if a community really wants to work on a schedule or have a sign up, we're certainly gonna do that. I think laundry is a little bit easier than bathrooms, but we will, communicate how many people should be in the bathroom at one time. If there are that many people, come back. Don't use two sinks that are right next to each other, et cetera, so that students can do some of that monitoring themselves.
Great, thank you. And more about life in residence halls. So Jean, what are the plans to keep kids from feeling isolated and alone with all these social distancing guidelines?
So I mentioned earlier, we are planning to form, this is probably not what they're going to be called, but micro communities. So small groups of students who live on a floor together, who we can bring together in person, in a lounge, outside, have them introduce themselves to each other, connect, do some activities both in the residence halls and on the campus outside. So certainly that's going to be one way we do that. Our resident assistants, one of their roles is to do check-ins with their residents. Many of those will be virtual, but our RAs will still be expected to connect with the residents in their community, say hello, check in on what they're doing. We will have some plans for that. So there'll be topical areas that RAs will check in. And then on the campus community, there are also outdoor activities being planned. And so I know my colleagues in campus recreation are thinking about, how many students can we have in outdoor yoga? And then the new students orientation program is thinking about what kind of outdoor activities they can have. So we are going to do our best, both virtually and in person in small groups, to help students connect with each other. I would also say, something I always offer during family orientation is if you're concerned about your students' experience, if they feel like they need for one of our staff to connect with them, please contact the residence director of the hall they live in. That residence director can do outreach, connect, check in, see what they need at that time. If you have a particular concern, and I would also encourage you to connect with your students and ask them to kind of, hey, connect with your RA, do that outreach, make those connections themselves. I know this is not going to be easy. I have an 18-year-old in my house who is not seeing friends. This is really hard. And like I said, we will do our best to help facilitate those connections for students.
Great, thank you. So I've got another one that I think either of you could respond to. So we'll see who takes it first. If my child gets to school and decides that they do not feel comfortable, they decide they want to return and study from home, is there a deadline to make that decision? What's the process? How does that all work?
Jean, I'll take that one. So we do have a rent refund schedule, and if students do check out and make the decision to leave the residence halls and check out, and there will be a prorated refund for the first 5 weeks of the semester. And we would encourage, before that happens, and I think this is also part of the community agreement, that they outreach to all the resources and talk with their academic advisor. Definitely would want them talking with their residence director to see if there's anything that we can help resolve or mitigate. But yes, a student can cancel their housing during the semester, and there is a prorated refund schedule that we use for the first 5 weeks.
Great, thank you. So this is life on campus. Jean, if I live off campus, and I know that's out of your direct wheelhouse, but I think you can answer. If I live off campus, will I still be able to have a UMass dining plan?
That's my understanding, that off-campus students will be able to still purchase a meal plan and come to campus to get their meals.
Great, thank you. And so I think that I'll just add a little bit of detail to that. I think any student who lives off campus and plans to make use of any on-campus facilities or resources would be expected to sign the UMass agreement. So I believe that UMass dining plans will be available for students who live off campus and sign the agreement. Okay. I've got a couple of regular non-pandemic themed residential life questions, which is great. Can we rent a micro chill?
Absolutely, yes. Absolutely, yes. And we are working with MicroChill currently to work on a semester rate that will be different than past years, because given what we're kind of navigating and trying to figure out this year together, MicroChill is going to be available to students, and they will be updating information on their website within the next several days. We had a really good meeting with MicroChill today to talk about having a semester rate versus a full year rate given our circumstances.
Great, thank you. Okay, scanning through the questions here. So can you, Jean, I think this will be for you, give a little insight into what students will do if they arrive on the 15th, with the first start of move-in. what are the plans for life on campus before classes begin?
Sure. So what we will do in the residence halls is we will connect with each student as they arrive. So our staff, those evenings, will connect with students, say hello, welcome to them to the residence halls, start to connect those small groups together as they arrive on campus. I know that my colleagues in new students orientation and transitions are also planning a full orientation program in small groups and virtually that will start the Thursday. I don't know the dates off the top of my head, but the Thursday prior to the first day of classes. The meal plan will be in place. So whatever day students come back to campus, they will be able to use their meal plan to get meals. And I know there are other campus partners who are starting to plan activities on campus, including campus recreation. So, again, many of those things will be virtual and will be small groups, but we will have some things for students to do before classes start.
Thank you so much, Jean. So I'm going to reiterate something that Dawn said because it's coming up again in the questions coming in, and segue into a new question. So yes, students will need to move out entirely at the end of the fall semester. And that leads us to a question about break housing. Will there still be break housing available for students this year? Dawn, can you answer?
Yes, students that are assigned to break housing will have the opportunity to stay through the break period. It's a much longer break period, but unless we close our campus, which again, we're not going to do, the students who are assigned to break housing are assigned to break housing for many reasons, because they need it, and they will still be able to remain. They do not have to check out at the Thanksgiving break when we close for fall semester, unless there's a bigger decision for the campus about closing.
Great, thank you. Okay, let's find another good one. So Jean, again, circling back to the agreement, you mentioned students being able to travel around the state and make their own decisions. Will parents be allowed to visit?
So parents and families will be able to come to campus. We will not be allowing guests in the residence hall. So if you choose to come to campus, do activities in the area, etc., you're more than welcome to do that. We just will not be allowing any guests in the residence halls. And there's some great restaurants here that are doing curbside and outdoor dining. So I encourage a visit to partake in some of our amazing food here.
And I'll jump in there and say there's tons and tons of awesome things to do here outside as well. And that may not be something that you would have thought about exploring in the past, but there's lots of great hiking trails and places to be outdoors that might make a fun day trip with you and your student.
Okay, great. So let's see, I am trying to find the most representative questions here with our few minutes left. So Dawn, I know I'm gonna ask you to speculate now, so I apologize in advance. How likely is it for a student who elects to stay off campus in the fall to get a spring housing assignment?
Very likely. As long as we are operating in a capacity where we can invite all students back like we have this fall, then there will be housing for students who have elected to stay home and learn remotely this fall.
Perfect, thank you. And another one for you, Dawn. Can you tell me, is there a set cleaning schedule for dorm bathrooms?
Absolutely. We are in process with that. We know that we have to increase our cleaning in our bathroom spaces, in our community spaces, our corridors, our lobbies. And so you will see additional cleaning throughout. High touch points will be managed throughout the day. We are in the process of finalizing the university's cleaning protocols, and we will be in line with the university's cleaning protocols around how often, what chemicals we use, And so I feel really confident that your students will be moving into very clean residence halls. And then we are going to work really hard to maintain them so that they remain safe for all of you and the staff that work in those buildings.
And can you expand on cleaning protocols? Are students responsible for cleaning and sanitizing their own spaces? And how about in suites?
Great question. The answer varies a bit. The answer about your own personal room, yes, you are responsible for cleaning your own room in all cases. There are some differences across our campus where we clean bathrooms. And so in our North apartments and our multi-year honors suites and apartments, we don't enter those suites or apartments and clean bathrooms. And so students are responsible for cleaning their own bathrooms and always have been. In the Sylvan residential area, we do clean the bathrooms in those suites. And then in our traditional residence halls where we have community bathrooms, of course, we clean those bathrooms.
Great, thank you. So I have another question for you, Dawn, and then I promise I'll find another one for Jean.
It's okay.
Students coming from out of state, specifically the West Coast, is there storage available on campus for their belongings after move out? And if not, what should they do? Can you recommend other options for them?
Absolutely. We work with an incredible vendor. They were very helpful to us this spring as we were working with students about move out options. They're called dorm room movers. Dorm room movers will pick up your packed items and store them for you over the winter break, and then they will redeliver them to you at the beginning of spring semester. There are also other local storage units, storage companies in the area, but we strongly recommend this. It's one of our preferred vendors, and they are very customer oriented, and I think it makes it really easy. They come pick up the packed boxes and then they bring them back to you in the spring. And we just put the link in the chat, so good.
Great, thank you. So Jean keeps mentioning all of the online activities for students between NSO and classes beginning. Jean, can you give any insight into if there will be in-person outdoor activities as well?
That is my understanding, that staff are working on doing outdoor activities. Certainly our staff, when we meet with those small groups, we will encourage them to do some things outside. We will provide, all sorts of suggestions for outside. But I do know that campus recreation and student activities are working on some appropriately socially distanced outdoor activities. I don't know all of the details, but I do know that staff are working on those activities and that they'll be available.
Great, thank you. So I have another question here. What personal protective equipment or medical supplies will students be expected to bring for themselves?
Mm-hmm. Yep. As part of the community agreement, we have outlined what are some of the PPE and cleaning supplies that they will need to bring with them. So that can be found in the community agreement. And second part of that question again, Pete, I lost track of it. PPE and
medical equipment or medical supplies.
Right. So we want students to bring those items with them at move-in. As I've indicated very lightly, because we're still working out the details, and we will communicate with students once we have final decisions made about our packages and how often students can have packages sent to campus. What I would work on avoiding is trying to ship any medicine or medical supplies in the first several weeks of the semester. Again, we're going to try to manage our package load differently with some restrictions, but last year, many of our residential service desks were inundated with packages with things, very important things that people needed immediately, and then also very, in my opinion, not important things that were just being ordered, and we can't tell the difference when the bin comes in. And so we actually made some changes for spring semester and encouraged folks to think about moving their prescriptions to the Amherst area so that there isn't a need to have your medicine shipped to you. But if that is not the case, then you'll want to bring, I would say, at least a 60-day supply so that you're not in a position with some challenges around packages in getting the medical supplies that you need.
Great, thank you so much. And sort of dovetailing onto that, what should be included in someone's self-isolation go bag? Where can I find a list of things to include?
I'm pretty sure, is that in the community agreement, Jean? She's on mute.
No, I don't think it's in the community agreement.
I can see Jane's face.
Pete, do you know where that is?
I think I do know where it is. So I believe that is on the umass.edu/reopening page on the health and safety guidelines. It's a document produced by the Office of Environmental Health and Safety, and it has a complete checklist of things to include in a go bag. It is linked to from the web version of the UMass agreement, which is posted online, and maybe I can have the link to the agreement posted again in the chat for all of you. But it is linked to from that document, I believe. It takes you to a PDF that identifies items to have in a go bag. Sorry to give you a question that I knew
okay.
and you didn't.
I knew it was somewhere.
I've read it.
Okay, and so I didn't have a chance to read through other questions because I was the one answering the question that time. So here's one that's come in a lot over the last half an hour or so. Are housing rates being adjusted since the semester is shorter?
My understanding is that we are not adjusting the rates for this fall.
Thank you, Dawn. Okay, so we are at just about 6:25. We've got 5 minutes left. I know that Rose had allowed for closing statements from Jean and Dawn. If there were any final thoughts that you wanted to share or things that you wanted to make sure people had. Dawn, do you have anything?
I'll go first. First of all, thank you all for being with us tonight. We know that you have lots of questions. We know that this is a very challenging time and there's lots to weigh in on the decisions that you're making for your family this fall. I want to echo what Jean said when she introduced herself. I wish we did not have to do things different this year. I wish that we could do things the way that we do at UMass and have an awesome move-in and an incredible first week and have students on campus meeting each other and socializing and doing lots of fun activities. And so I just want folks to know that personally, it is hard for me to think about how different UMass is going to be in the fall, but I know that our students can rise to the occasion and meet our expectations and adhere to our community agreement. And in doing so, we're going to stay open. And we're going to have people here and students are going to be taking classes. And in many small ways, as they've been described by Jean tonight, there are going to be points of engagement and connection, and you are going to meet people. It's just going to feel really different. And how you set up your room is going to be really different. What you bring to campus for fall is going to be really different. And so I just want to express that we recognize that it is going to be very different. We want you here. We're excited that you're coming. But we also know that some of these restrictions might feel like, I'm not sure, but we're doing it because we want everyone to be safe and we want to have a successful fall semester. And thank you for being with us tonight.
Dawn really just took my closing, and that, UMass is a great place. We're glad you've chosen UMass, whether you are new to our campus or returning. We certainly hope that we will be back in a normal operation as soon as possible. And we are doing everything that we can so that as a campus, we can get there and contribute what we can to the kind of broader Massachusetts guidance and decisions around operating in this pandemic. So welcome. I know that there's some questions we haven't been able to answer. I know that on our website, we have a list of frequently asked questions, so we can update some of those for you. And again, we know you have difficult decisions to make. I'm in a similar situation to all of you. We've worked our whole parenting lives for this, right? To send their kids off to college. So this is hard, and I recognize that. So thank you for spending time with us. I appreciate it. And we look forward to seeing you all, whether it's this fall or in the future, and we will serve your students the best we can, no matter when that is.
Thank you so much, Jean and Dawn. I think there's lots of gratitude pouring in for you and your answers in the chat. I know that everybody really appreciates it, and I know that people are looking forward to coming to campus in the fall and getting to be part of the UMass community. So thank you both. I'll turn it over to Rose to close us out.
Thank you all, everyone, for being here and talking to our family members. Members, we will continue to communicate with you. Whatever information we have and we know we can share with you, we will email you and share that information with you. As everybody here said, we are here to serve you, and we want to do what's best for you and provide you with the information that you need so you can make the best decision for you and your student. So with that said, thank you again for being here. Be safe and go UMass.